Hello friends, welcome to this special lecture, Symbolic Expression, and in the studio we have Manisha Sharma with us as the sign language expert. And the topic of today's discussion is Hindi cinema and feminist film theories. In the earlier lecture on this, we talked about that some of the feminist film theories, how they have tried to see the question of the portrayal of women, and how these feminist film theories they could be applied to the Hindi cinema, as well as some of the scholars they have tried to talk about the various kinds of feminist film theories, whether the American film theory, feminist film theory, or the British feminist film theory. And these scholars they also even argued that as Indian cinema or Hindi cinema is also very unique in that sense, so we need not follow these kinds of theories and we should develop our own approach in terms of how women they have been portrayed in Indian cinema. And some of the scholars which were being discussed in the earlier lecture were Laura Mulvey, who talked about the male gaze, that how male gaze is very important in the framework of the portrayal of the women, and how the male gaze is a dominant gaze in the film, and how women they are being shown in the film, how they are also being objectified in that sense. Some of the scholars like McKinnon, Ruby Rich, etc., they were also being discussed, and how their ideas they have also shaped the feminist film theories that was also being discussed in the earlier lecture as well. And we were also talking about that how these kinds of developments in the film theories also in a way enhance or expand the studies related to the cinema in the context of the depiction of women, and how women, especially in the Indian context, that how the patriarchal society in a way tries to show them in the various kinds of presentations on celluloid, that was also being talked about. When you talk about the kinds of books which one can refer, or the articles, you can see on the screen that these are some of them, beginning from Shomai Chatterjee, Subject Cinema, Object Women, a study of portrayal of women in Indian cinema, Laura Mulvey, Visual Pleasure and Narrative Cinema, and Leo Brody and Marshall Cohen, Edited Film Theory and Criticism, Ian Kaplan, Women in Films, Both Sides of Camera, Catherine McKinnon, Towards the Feminist Theory of State. So these are some of the readings which one can refer when one is talking about the various kinds of portrayals with regard to women, and how the various feminist questions they have also been regard that how the women character is being positioned vis-a-vis the male characters, they have also been talked about in that particular context. Then we also see that how when we talk about women in cinema, there is a lot of stereotyping with regard to that, and how women they are being shown as some sort of an appendage to men. And the ideas with regard to the traditions and the symbols, as we talked earlier also, that these ideas of palanquin and funeral pyre, in that sense the Doli and Arthi, they are also being in a way shown in the Indian films, where we find that how women they have to in a way play a kind of role which is subservient to men. And we also in a way are going to talk about that how the notion of Indianness, where hero is wooing the heroine and finally she agrees. So they are also in a way perpetuate some kind of real life incidents as well, that when male characters they are in a way persistent in their efforts, then finally women or the heroine they agree. And many times we have also seen that when such kind of offers they are being rejected in the real life, then how the people, those who are engaging in such kind of practices, they want to take some kind of revenge on women. And one of the films recently which came was Chapak in that context, that how when male characters they are being rejected by the women for the kind of advances which they make, then they also engage in some kind of criminal activities as well. So we find that some of the films which have been made in that context, in the sense that how heroes they are wooing the heroine, and one of them was Hum Saath Saath Hain, which was made in 1999, and how the family identity dominates the professional identity of a woman, as you can see in this film, that how a woman doctor, is not in a way shown to be a doctor. Rather, her positioning in the film was that she was a daughter of a family friend who was to get married to the hero of the film. So such kind of projections or portrayals, they focus on these kinds of aspects where women, they have to play a secondary role to the hero, and the homely role of women is being reinforced by use of certain symbols like Mangal Sutra, Sindoor, and elaborate wedding customs which are being shown. And many times we see that how marriages, they are being celebrated on the celluloid, and some of the films like Hum Aapke Hain Kaun, largely they were being made on this particular kind of an aspect, that they were trying to showcase Indian weddings. And even in such kind of films, women, they have to in a way sacrifice, as this film was also based on that kind of a structure, that a girl had to sacrifice because her sister died and she had to marry the husband of her sister after her death. So such kinds of demands, they are also being made on the women, that they have to reconciliate with any kind of a situation which is there in the family or the society. And any kind of woman who is a modern woman who is seen to be educated, so she is seen to be some kind of a threat to the hierarchical family structure which is there. And we find that during the course of the film, she is being also transforms into a simple and the sacrificing wife or partner. So this kind of a transformation also takes place when we find that any kind of advanced or modern women is being shown. So generally films, we find that they try to show the subordinate role function of the women, and how we find that they are being shown as the protagonist's wife or mother, and or they are the love interest of the male protagonist, and they are trying to aid the male protagonist to achieve his goals, or their screen time generally is less in the comparison to the male lead in the film. So we find that all these kinds of techniques which are being used in the films, where women, they are either shown to be the mother or the wife of the male protagonist, and many times we find that older males are still playing the role of the hero, and the women, those who got married, and even if they are very young, they are shown to be playing the role of the character roles, in that sense that they are playing the roles of either the sisters or sister-in-laws in the family, or even the role of the mother as well, which we find that some of the heroines of the yesteryears, they have not only played the role of the love interest of the hero, but they have also played the role of the mother. I remember one of the films, Kabhi Kabhi, in which Wahida Rehman played the role of the wife of Amitabh Bachchan, and in one of the later films she also played the role of the mother of Amitabh Bachchan. So that was Shakti. So we find that, or rather it was Trishul, I would say that in that particular film, Trishul, she played the role of Wahida Rehman. So we find that such kind of portrayals, where women over a period of time, they have to in a way play that kind of a character, and how over a period of time male actors, they are playing the role of male lead even in the advanced age as well. So when you talk about that, how women, they are generally being shown in the framework of any kind of alternative roles which are being offered to them, when they are not the heroine, when they are being not shown to be virtuous in nature, then either they play the role of the vamp or the courtesan in the films, or they are the nightclub dancers, bar dancers, cabaret dancers, prostitutes and call girls. So these are the kind of roles within the framework of the good side of the women or the bad side of the women, and there are no shades of grey in that sense which every individual has. So such kind of portrayals which are in a binary of good or bad, in the binary of in the white and black, and there are no shades of grey, are generally seen to be in many of the films which have been made. And we also see that how women, they also have to make all sorts of compromises and sacrifices, and their interest is the least concern in that context, and they have to sacrifice everything for the sake of the family, and they have to put family ahead of self. And how we find that how the male protagonist, they are not doing any such kind of a thing when they are in a way being shown on the celluloid. And women, they have to be non-rebellious in every way, that they have to in a way conform to the established customs of the times, how they have to follow the social patterns which are there in the society, and they have to make all sorts of sacrifices for the sake of the family honor, or the social status which is there in the family as well. So we find that any kind of a woman who is being shown as having some kind of a career orientation, and over a period of time she will also be shown as some sort of a homemaker as well, where she has to take care of the children and her in-laws as well. So the household chores, they are more important from the point of view of women, and even when they are the career women, then also they have to take care of the household chores. So she has that kind of a double duty, that not only she is working at the home, but at the same time she is going out, and there also she is working. And we find that how she is also some kind of a fulcrum of the joint family, that it is not the male members those who have to take care of their parents, rather a woman, she also has to take care of her in-laws in the framework of the parents. And the male members, they are not giving that kind of a time or attention to the elder members of the family, and women, they have to not only attend to their day-to-day needs in terms of providing food, but at the same time they also have to take care of their medical needs. They are accompanying them when they are going to the hospital. And so such kind of additional responsibility could also be seen in the framework of women, and not specific mention of their career interests they are being made in that particular context, and how wife basically, or women, they have to be very pious or devoted in nature, and they have to be very God-fearing and religious as well. So in that way she has to conform to the traditional values which are pertaining to the marriage or prayer, religious rituals as well. All these kinds of rituals or religion, they have to follow all of them. And when they are also performing the religious rites, offering prayers and puja in the room or the temple. And we find that in many of the films which have been made for the NRI audience as well, one of them was DDLJ, Dilwale Dulhaniya Le Jayenge, where Kajol is shown to be keeping a fast Karwa Chauth for her husband. So even when she was not married at that point of time, and even after marriage, such kind of rituals which are being in a way followed from the point of view of women, they are considered to be regressive by some of the scholars. They have been criticized that these kinds of rituals, they are very regressive in nature. So we find that women, a lot of demands they are being made, that they should not have any kind of premarital affairs, and they should not have any kind of a more than one lover in the film. So the ideas of purity and chastity, they are being in a way imposed on them, and we find that they have to be shown as someone who has all sorts of virtues. And we also find that they cannot even drink or smoke. They have to be non-flirtatious in nature, and they don't have to interact much with men except the family members or the love interest. And they don't have to appear in any kind of an item number or a nightclub dance, etc., for which you have a vamp kind of a character who will involve herself in such kind of item numbers. So we find that they generally have to appear in a traditional Indian costumes for the majority of her screen time role. So all these kinds of things, they are generally being shown, And we also find that when they are being shown in a very sensuous manner, then other kinds of techniques they are being used to show them in that sense, that when any kind of tribal costume that they reach some kind of a tribe, then they wear that costume, and then they are being shown in some kind of rain dance. So even that rain is very sudden kind of a thing, or behind the bushes scene which are being shown, or either the way they are being framed in any kind of a sensuous ways, or when they appear in some kind of revealing clothes as well. So all these kinds of things they are being taken or resorted to in the context of the objectification of women, that how women, they are not seen to be human beings, those who are independent of their self, rather they are being shown as some kinds of objects. And these objects, in that sense, this kind of an object or objectification is happening in the films as well as in the advertising industry as well. That many times we see that in many of the advertisements, even when the women, they are not being required, but they are being shown in these advertisements. So we are not able to make any kind of a connect that why this kind of a portrayal of women is happening in that particular advertisement. So similar is the case of films. We find that how women, they are also being objectified in that sense. We also see that in the initial 1920s and 30s, when cinema came, and many of the roles, they were being played by the Eurasians or the Anglo-Indian women. As women entering the profession of films was not considered to be respectable, and we will recollect that how Raja Harishchandra, when it was being made by Dada Saheb Phalke was not able to find a woman to play the role of Taramati, who was the female character, and how Salunke, who was a man, he had to play the role of a woman in that particular film. So how in the initial phase we find that women, they considered that they do not have to enter the film industry, and many of the names of the anglicized names of the female or the heroines, those who were not Indians, like Ruby Mayers, she was changed to Sulochana, Marian Hill as Vilochana, Rennie Smith as Sita Devi, and Mary Evans as Nadia. So we find that how these women, those who were the foreign women, and these foreign women, they changed their names to the Indian names, and then they played role in the Indian cinema as well. And we find that it was very difficult to find the upper caste well-educated women in the films. For example, Durga Khote, who came in 1930s in the cinema, and she belonged to that kind of a faction of society. And how British educated Devika Rani, who studied in Britain, and when she came to India, she broke the shackles and also joined the film industry as well. And a woman like Fatima Begum, who became the first woman director as well. We find that some of the films which were made in the colonial period, which were talking about the issues of women, and in those films, especially one of them was by V. Shantaram, and in that particular film we find that how a girl is being tricked to marry an old man, and it was an issue of the mismatched marriages. And we find that how she refuses to consummate her marriage, and the husband develops that some kind of a guilt and accepts her as his daughter and takes a vow from her that she will remarry after his death. And then he commits suicide, as we find that divorces were not all that common in those times. And this film, which was made by V. Shantaram with the title of Kunukku or Duniya Na Mane, and we find that women, they also in a way realized that their emancipation lied in their own hands, and they have to fight the injustice which is there in the society, and unless they will fight the injustice which is there in the society, they will not be able to in a way improve their condition in the society. And we also find that how V. Shantaram, who is considered to be a person who made a number of films which were concerned with the reforms in the Indian society, as I talked about Duniya Na Mane, and how the revolutionary reform spirit of woman, which was realized by men in that particular, realized by women, and how they have to make all sorts of efforts to come out of that kind of a situation. And there was a film called Aadmi, which was again made by V. Shantaram, where the stories of a simple-minded policeman and an innocent prostitute, and how the policeman later falls in love with that prostitute and offers to marry her. But she is not able to come out of the kind of a situation in which she was, and how she was haunted by the moral legacy of the past, and she walks out of his life. So we find that such kind of portrayals, that where women they are being shown to be in a kind of a profession where they could not come out of that kind of a profession. And the climax of the film basically supported a pragmatic approach to the frustrations of the life, and we find that which was completely and consciously opposed to the glamorization of frustration in Devdas, which was made in 1935. And Shantaram himself, he argued that he was appalled by the pessimism of Devdas, which was made in 1935 by Barua, and other such films as well, which affected the audience so strongly that Aadmi was in a way answer to the film called Devdas. So any kind of a pessimism which was there in the society was to be rejected, as V. Shantaram argued, and he in a way acknowledged that he made this film, which was a positive film in response to Devdas. And we also see, when you talk about this film Aadmi, we find that how the prostitute loses her courage in the film, and she defeats herself when she refuses to marry the male character who was playing the role of a policeman. So in that sense, Shantaram in a way provoked the society to a new thought, that when will the society reclaim the prostitute who is more sinned against than a sinner. Apart from that, we also see that some other films which were talking about the national movement, one of them was Brandy Ki Bottle, which was talking about the participation of women in large numbers as well, that how their campaign against the evil of drinking brought them outside their homes, and they participated in the public sphere as well. So this made them aware of not only about the social problems but also political ones as well, because when women came out in the large numbers to participate in the national movement on the issue of prohibition, because prohibition was one thing, how the liquor consumption by men was directly affecting the families, and women, they were the worst sufferers in that sense. When men, they spent the money whatever was being earned by them on liquor, so the daily needs of the house, they were not being met because of the less money, but how they were consuming alcohol and spending money on that was some kind of a problem for the women, and because of which we find them on the streets participating in a number of campaigns in support of prohibition. And how these kinds of problems were not only social problems but also political, in the sense that how various parties at that point of time was fighting against the British for the freedom of India. So we find that all these kinds of films, whether Andaz, which was made in 1949, was again some kind of a love triangle which was making a powerful statement against the pitfalls of the affluent Indian girls taking blindly to the westernized ways of friendship and love. Then there was another film called Aurat, which was made by Mehboob Khan, and how it was inspired by the Pearl Burke's novel The Good Earth, and this film was again made after 17 years in the name of Mother India. So in 1957, and it was also sent to the Oscars. So I think this kind of a portrayal or presentation of women in the framework of Indian cinema has largely stereotypical in nature, and now the changes are coming in the context that more and more women, they are also joining the film industry and bringing some kind of a change in the portrayals. So with this, I'd like to end the discussion. Thank you very much.